So let's give the candidates a moment or two, and let me check my instructions here, and I think they both get about an hour. No, wait a minute. They only get 3 minutes. Okay, who would like to go first? Kelly Frasca, if you don't mind introducing yourself in 3 minutes, tell us a little bit about you.
Hello, my name is Kelly Frasca, and I am honored to be here today to discuss why I'm the right choice to lead our city as your new mayor. As your former commissioner, I have the experience, vision, and passion to move forward and make our city a better place. I have been a resident of this city now for over 10 years. During that time, I have seen our city grow and change, the successes and failures, the progress and the stagnation, as well as areas where we can improve, all while seeing the potential of what our city has to offer. I believe that I can bring a fresh perspective to the mayor's office and be a beneficial team member, as I would be one of 5 in our commission body. Since I left office in late 2021, I have remained involved and in attendance at our city commission meetings and workshops. I have kept in contact with our local, state, and federal officials to ensure that Lake Helen will have the necessary support from our national government. For example, in January of 2023, I visited the Capitol in Washington, D.C. to discuss our current water situation and solutions with our congressman. In April, I visited our state capitol in Tallahassee to discuss our wildlife corridor with the state officials and how Lake Helen can contribute. As I am passionate about protecting our environment and ensuring that our community is a safe and healthy place to live. I believe that I am the choice to move forward in the right direction for generations to come. I understand the challenges that we face and the needs for our citizens. I'm committed to finding solutions that will benefit everyone. I understand the importance of investing in our infrastructure and how it will benefit our community as a whole. I am committed to working with local businesses and to create a sustainable economy. I am willing to listen to all sides of an issue and make a decision that are in the best interest of our city and our citizens. I am not afraid to take risks and make tough decisions when necessary. I am committed to transparency and accountability and making sure that all of our citizens have access to the resources they need to succeed, as I believe that the citizens of our city deserve to know what is happening and why. I will ensure that all decisions are made with the utmost integrity and that all citizens are treated equally with respect so that our community is well represented. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Vernon Burton. My mother built the house I lived in about 45 years ago. My family's been in Lake Helen for about 100 years. I moved here about 23 years ago. And the first time we were in this setting, there was a question that was going around. And the question was, they heard that this guy is running for city commissioner, and they said that I bet you he's got a record as long as your arm. That was what was in the conversation. So when I took the stand, I took the podium, I said, well, I understand that there is a rumor going around that I have had a long arrest record, and I had to admit to it that I did, but I also had to admit that I was the arresting officer in each one of those cases. On Facebook today, I heard that there was a reference to my being a police officer. And to be clear, I was a New York City corrections officer, which in law enforcement is considered to be a law enforcement officer. No one has ever heard me say that I was a police officer. Clear that up. Now, why am I here? I've been a commissioner for 12 years. And along that time, I've also served as vice mayor. I started out as a commissioner of planning. I was on the PLDRC. I learned my way through the system of the city because it's a unique city. We rule, or I should say that the city operates by way of a committee form of government. That means that there are 5 commissioners. The mayor is probably the least amount of say-so because he cannot make a motion. Neither can he second a motion. He can gavel the order to order the meeting together. Now, leadership. One of the first things that I was told when I was asked by a few people am I running? And I was collecting my pension and I was not in awe thinking about running. But one of the things I asked was, what is the problems that the city has? And right now they were told is leadership. Leadership is what I bring to this table. I bring proven leadership. I bring dedication. And I bring the experience. I can go back 10 years to tell you how things were created, why we did it, and how we unraveled the problems, how we dealt with the problems. So I am a person that will be able to make this group, which is going to be a new commission, and the average length of time on the commission is 2 people have 3, a year and a half, one has 3 years, and one has 0. So you're going to need a person that has leadership and need a person that has experience that can bring the city to where it needs to be.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Burton. Thank you, Ms. Frasca. For the group, I have several sets of questions that I've organized here, and I've already shared this information with both candidates. I have some softball questions. I have some hardball questions. Then I have a couple of questions that are directly addressed to Ms. Frasca, and I've explained this to her. Now, of these questions that are directly addressed to Ms. Frasca, several are somewhat the same. So I'm going to attempt to try and ask these questions out of respect for the questioner of Ms. Frasca, and she's agreed with that. And I'll ask her when she's ready for one of those. With that said, to be sure here, each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to the question. There is no rebuttal. About 10 seconds before time is up, Bill is going to give you a heads up that you got 10 seconds left, and crowd 10 seconds left, and there's a timer right here in front of you. And then I get to ask the first question, but I've got to ask Ms. Heather Rutledge to pick a number between 1 and 12. Did you? Great. Pick the number. All right? You got the number? Whoever gets closer to that number she's picked between 1 and 12 gets to go first. Ms. Frasca, what number did you pick in your mind? Mr. Burton, sir? 2 and 8, Ms. Rutledge. It was 8. Mr. Vernon Burton goes first. Mr. Burton, you pretty much had already said some of this, but why are you running for this position?
I'm running for the position of mayor because I feel that I can bring something to the table. I've got the amount of time that has given me more wisdom and understanding. And the one thing I understand about the city is that leadership is what makes the city run. I've been in situations where we had leadership that was faulty. And the one thing that can tell you about leadership that's faulty, you'll see that there's an exit of people leaving the city. And that's coming from the leadership. And we've had this in this last commission. So I think one of the things that we need to do is to be able to bring our commissions together, to be able to unify them. One of the things that we didn't do, I don't know if they do it anymore, but they have what they call the League of Cities dinners. And that's from all the cities around, that every city, every other month will have a League of Cities. And they bring their employees there. I don't think our city commission and our city workers socialize outside of the work. And some of the things that we need to do is to be able to get a common ground. And we get to understand one another. Because we all are working here for the same purpose, for this city, Lake Helen. Never mind the land, and never mind whatever's next door. The other important thing is that I also sit on the planning board now. And as you know, the governor has now made it additional that there's going to be affordable housing. There's going to be 348 units that's going to go where the auto mall used to be. I'm going to be on the planning board, so I'm going to be able to marshal that through. So by the time I become mayor, I'll have at least the experience to know where we need to take this city so that the city doesn't get taken for a role. So that's my intention. And I went, 10 seconds? Oh, I'll stop.
Good. Ms. Frasca, the question was, why are you running?
Thank you, Jim. As I've spent the last close to 2 years being able to ask questions and be in our meetings as a citizen, I have learned so much, and I have had the freedom of not having to, I guess, ask the commission, is it okay if I go ask this question or go up here and there? So I've had the ability to do that research, and it's given me the opportunity to create these connections within our government that will allow us to be able to achieve a lot of the things here in our city with our infrastructure, our water, and also some of the happy fun stuff as far as our environment, what we can save with conservation. So I would like to bring that to the table. I would also like to be able to present some of the ideas and solutions to some of our current issues with the help of our officials. In addition, I really love Lake Helen. My heart is here. I don't think there's a day that I'm not doing something that could be a part of Lake Helen, either in the community or here, at the city itself. And if you ever look at my calendar, it's nonstop, because I want to make sure that Lake Helen remains home for all of us. We all moved here, if not born here, for the same reason of staying here forever and loving where we are. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Frasca. These first sets of questions, community and candidates, are generally hardball questions directed at current issues that are on hand upon the City Commission. This is the next question, and Ms. Frasca, I'll direct this question to you first. What is your vision for the City of Lake Helen, the future vision?
Thank you, Jim. Well, I see our future in moving it towards a positive direction. I feel that with an open mind, with our commission, and being able to work together, that we can achieve really good things. I know that I had spoke with our congressman last Thursday, and he's aware of our water situation, our drinking water. And we've talked about different things that can, different routes that we can visit through grants. Grants that are available through local, state, and federal. And we need to have help with grants, because our taxes are high enough. Our taxes are high enough. We are one of the most highest. I'm not sure if we're still the highest, because we haven't set our actual millage yet today. But we are one of the highest in our county. And we have that money. We just need to spend it with caution, so that way we can start in the right direction, along with grants. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Burton, your time. What is your vision for the future of Lake Helen?
My vision is one that is based on the fact that we have been a bedroom community for a long time. When I got on the board, before I ran, one of the first things that I was asked, are you for growth or no growth? I was new and I didn't really have an answer for either one, so I created something called I'm for smart growth. So now that seems to be where we should be going right now, smart growth. To be able to use the resources that we have to bring people into the community, to have a way to generate resources that are refundable or renewable resources. We have lakes, we have parks, we have open spaces. We have the ability to have people to come through, enjoy Lake Helen, and leave. I'm sorry. The new development that's coming up on the 340 units, so the 20 acres that was going to be the auto mall, well, they're going to be basically on the other side of I-4, and most of them will be leaning toward DeLand. Now, because the developer decided to just use affordable housing and not townhouses, because townhouses have what they call homestead exemption, and that will leave some taxes on the table. So if we can be able to use the energy that we're going to be getting from the on the other side of Lake Helen, on the other side of Orange Camp Road, to bring revenue to the city. They don't have to come here to rather than use the post office and enjoy our city, but they're going to have the resources on that side, and they're going to be leaning, I'm saying, towards DeLand. So we're in a position that we have the ability to grow, but not get inundated by overgrowth. And I think we are in a position to be able to do that, and I think I can see us growing that way.
Thank you, Sarah. These questions are related, these first ones, to this third one here. And so, Mr. Burton, what training and experience, since you've talked about your future and why you want to run, what training and experience do you have that would make you the right choice?
Training. I was a developer in New York. I managed and owned apartment buildings. So I was also, my father was a builder, so I was a licensed contractor. As far as the things, my law enforcement days were in the city of Lake Helen's, in the city of New York, and I don't bring any law enforcement experience here other than the fact that I do have an affinity for our police officers, because they are doing a job that is not really being addressed financially or otherwise. So what I bring to the table is an experience of being able to manage people. I am the treasurer. I was the former treasurer of the Greater Union First Baptist Church in DeLand. Church is 146 years old. I'm currently the vice chair of the trustee board, and we have a building that we're developing with Mark Shuttleworth, who was one of the former mayor here in Lake Helen. My connections within the government, being a longtime commissioner and being involved with the Boys and Girls Club, along with some of the other organizations that I belong to, I think I bring that to the table. Now, I just would be remiss if I didn't say that if it hadn't been for Joe Hammond and us going up to Tallahassee when the lake was about to be inundated, and because we were able to go up and ask the Fish and Wildlife to allow us to put pesticide in our lake, which was completely against what most people believe, but we had to do that to save the lake. And we had to kill the hydrilla before it spread, and then we also were able to put sterile carp in there, and that's why the lake now is beginning to overflow. So I've had that experience with regards to environment.
Ms. Frasca, having heard the first two questions about why you want to run and the vision for Lake Helen, what training and experience do you have that would make you the right choice for mayor?
Thank you, Jim. Training and experience. I have firsthand training and experience from living here in Lake Helen, being able to speak with our citizens, being involved in our community, and reaching out to other community organizations where I've learned so much from, such as our American Legion Auxiliary. I'm coming in as president-elect for this year, and I'm also appointed to our local, our district legislative point person. So within that, it kind of crosses back and forth, being able to see the bills coming in on how they pertain to not only the American Legion and the American Legion Auxiliary, but to also see how these bills and watching these bills come through, how they affect us as a community, as a city. Training, I have participated in almost all of our certifications and courses that the Florida League of Cities has to offer. There's a few that wasn't offered before I left office, but even during these past months, I have gone on and I participated not only in the Florida League of Cities and their training forums, but I've also participated in other organizations for our environment with 1,000 Friends of Florida. Thank you.
That's 2 minutes go by pretty quick, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Boom. So we're going to get into some of the issues now. I thought I've done my best. There may be a few others that come into your vision why you want to run and all of that, but I think I've got the 3 salient questions to ask. So here's another issue, and I have several questions on this. This issue, I'll give you a heads up for both candidates. And Ms. Frasca, speaking last, you'll be speaking first on this. This concerns the Lake Helen Police Department. One question is, do you support our LHPD, and why or why not? The other question is, and I'm reading these verbatim right now, what will you do to support our police in Lake Helen? We need to keep them. The last question, do you support a recent proposal by Commissioner Bishop to do away with the Lake Helen Police Department and bring in the Volusia County Sheriff's Office? Why or why not? So I think the question is here at hand, how do you feel about the Lake Helen Police Department? And what do you feel about their future here in concert with the city of Lake Helen?
Thank you for capping that, because I was trying to write it all down.
I'll keep them right here. Matter of fact, if you want to refer to them,
yes, if you don't mind,
you may
thank you.
certainly refer to them.
I 100% support our LHPD. Our police department is such a valuable asset to our community. I don't know many people that would come to work on the underpaid salaries of our police officers and risk their lives for us. But these men, and I can say that because we don't have any women, unfortunately, at this time, but these men, they work 12-hour shifts. They are there day and night. They don't complain. They are wonderful with the community. I think one of our recent arrests, there was from my understanding, there was a felon who was running away. Anyways, he was running away from our police officers. Knowing our city, knowing the pockets of the ins and out of our city, they were able to locate that felon and actually make 3 arrests that night. And we had backup from the Volusia County, which is a normal situation when you have 1 or 2 officers on duty. So I absolutely support them. I always have supported them. I've asked on several occasions while in office about raising the pay. Let me see. We do need to keep them. They shouldn't go anywhere, and I believe that since I can't be in those union meetings at this time because I'm not a sitting commissioner, but I do believe that our our PD need to be able to resolve that union issue.
Thank you, Ms. Frasca. Mr. Burton, you need those questions re-asked?
Yes, please.
Very well.
All right. One. Okay.
So these are the 3 questions, Mr. Burton. Don't start the time yet, Bill. Do you support the Lake Helen Police Department? Why or why not is one question. The second question is, what will you do to support our police department here in Lake Helen? We do need to keep them. The third question is, do you support a recent proposal by Commissioner Bishop to do away with the LHPD, the Lake Helen Police Department, and bring in the Volusia County Sheriff's Office, and why or why not?
Okay. I'll start with the last one first because I did speak to Commissioner Bishop about this because she knows my background. As she put it, that she has the fiduciary responsibility to look into whether or not it would be economically feasible to have the sheriff's department to come in here. That was a look-see. So that's what she told me, and I believe her. And it does make sense that we can take that look. Now, the fact that I was in law enforcement, and I was shot in the line of duty, so let's make that clear. I wasn't shot in a bar, hanging out. I was apprehending a fleeing felon. So, had that being said, I have that affinity to officers who come on to put on that badge and stand in the gap between you and anything that's coming at you. I also participated. I once participated when our officers did not a live fire, but we did an active shooter drill, of all places in Volusia Pine, and I was the active shooter, and they had to come in and get me, and I did get 3 of them before they got me. So I think that the training that they need should be amplified. I think that the equipment that they have should be amplified. I found out in 1 year that at one point that the safety vests that they had, they're Kevlar. And if you're sitting in a car for 12 hours of the day and you're sweating, that Kevlar will absorb that sweat, and then that Kevlar vest will not become usable. So, and when I heard that, that was something that I wanted to address. So I'm going to be a guy that's going to look out for our officers, because the town is small enough that we need to have people who know where we are and know how to get there. The sheriff's department.
2 minutes goes quick. Yeah, it does. Let's keep that back and forth to a small minimum, please. We're going to go into another issue concerning the lake, since it was brought up earlier in Vernon. Since you responded last, you respond first on this, and this is addressed to both of you. What would your plan be to maintain Lake Helen Lake? Maintenance in the lake, as well as the banks and native vegetation, is the question as well. At this time, Florida Wildlife Commission is handling the invasive vegetation. What would your plan be, sir?
I'll say that for the entire time that I was on the city commission, the city did not have a plan for the lake. We just took it for granted. It was there. We use it. People will go ride their boats on the lakes and then come back and then backwash them in our lakes. That backwash put things into the lake that should not be there. So now that once the lake came to a point that there were actually 2, maybe 3 lakes because there was a land bridge, then we began to start paying attention. Also around us, we have to consider the fact that there's development that has used a lot of water, and we sit at the highest table. So if there's an aquifer that is being drained, our lakes were the first ones to go down. One of the things that our lake also has is a bubbling spring. And that spring, again, has not been addressed. And as a result, there was packs and debris and decay that stopped up the lake. It's just like you got a tub and you put a stopper in the tub, the water's not going down the drain. So we weren't being good stewards of the lake until it began to tell us that it's not going to be here much longer if we don't do something. So I think that the city should have it within their budget, and to be able to have something that's going to be on an ongoing, and not just as a four-alarm fire that we got to start trying to put out the problem that we are allowed to get beyond our ability to deal with it. So I think the city does have a responsibility, and the way that we can do it, there's funds that are available, there are grants that are available, there are programs that are available. So we just need to tap into it, because there's money on the table. We just got to ask for it.
Ms. Frasca, what would your plan be to maintain Lake Helen Lake? Maintenance in the lake, as well as the banks and native vegetation, a part of the question. At this time, the Florida Wildlife Commission is handling invasive vegetation.
Thank you, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I first came on to the commission, actually prior to that, in 2018, I believe it was, the Lake Helen Lake Committee began volunteering and going into the lake and pulling up weeds, and it was a wonderful situation. But I had thought, there has to be other ways. There has to be other ways for this. Why isn't the city taking control of our lakes? Why aren't they maintaining it? Shortly after that, their FWC had came in and they did some spraying of our banks and of some of the areas of those land bridges. This is how I feel, just flat out say it. I feel there's alternative methods to some of the spraying. We are able to harvest some of the vegetation. Some of the vegetation can be harvested and can be removed. Some of it cannot. So what I had done as a commissioner is I introduced a lake specialist. Right off the top of my head, I can't remember his title. His name is Sean Patton. He was basically a middle ground between spraying and non-herbicide treatment. Now, he brought in a lake maintenance plan that was absolutely amazing because we didn't have that in the past. And that's what we needed to move forward. I'd have to say that during that time, I also introduced... Okay, thank you.
You know what this does? It makes us sing. It makes us trying to stay with the point. That's all you need. The next question, Ms. Frasca, is going to be directed to you. It's not too much issue related, but we're going to go to the parks here for a little bit. What have you. So, what are your thoughts, Ms. Frasca, and you, Burton, what are your thoughts on the Lake Park pickleball build? You guys consider a water park for our children? Ms. Frasca.
Thank you, Jim. I have heard when I was on Parks and Recreation, there was a discussion of having a water pad, kind of like Orange City has, and that was not directed necessarily towards the shuffleboard court, but that was between the playground and the tennis courts. That was a discussion in that area, something about the water being close in that proximity. It never really came to fruition. As far as moving something in that realm or something water related for our community, I would love to see the proposal. I'd love to see that. I think that our kids, I have a little one still, and believe me, he'd like to run through some water, especially during this hot summer. But if that was something proposed for the shuffleboard, I'd be open to see the proposal and what the details are. As far as the shuffleboard currently, I would love to see this commissioning body move forward with ideas to bring it back into use. There's been many ideas that have been brought out. None of them has stuck. I don't have the reason why, but none of them have really stuck. But I think that we should look at that and figure out what to do with it, because as it sits right now, it is just getting worse. So, thank you.
Mr. Burton, how about you? What are your thoughts, plans for Lake Park shuffleboard building, and would you consider a water park for our children?
I would like to see that building utilized. I was in the market in the park, and a gentleman kind of got my ear, and he says, how come they don't have anything for senior citizens? Why can't that building be utilized for senior citizens to be able to have some place to come and to do some things? As I am on the Boys and Girls, I am vice president of governmental affairs of Boys and Girls Club, And as a result of that, I also was the Cub Scout master for the Lake Helen Cub Scouts. At the same time, I was a Cub Scout master for 3 other Cub Scout groups at the same time. We used that building for our Cub Scout meetings. It was an opportunity to be able to have some place for us to go. In terms of a water park, I'd like to see a design that would make that a viable addition to the city. It's an idea, but to the logistics of it and the cost of it would be something that we'd have to basically look over. So it's not a one-shot deal. It's not a one way in, one way out. I think it's something that we can use more efficiently. It is a building that has value. Now, the market in the park, we actually had to put up a porta potty because the bathroom doesn't work. We didn't have a bathroom over there, so we're using the market in the park. The people who are using it, if they don't use that, they're going to use our bathrooms. So sometimes we've had those bathrooms that get clogged up. So those are things that we need to consider when people use that there are going to be needs that they're going to have to be addressed. So it's a comprehensive thing that we can look into that will give us the ability to have something that we can use, something that's useful, because I would not want to tear the building down just for the sake of tearing it down, but I would like to see it not just stand and not be used.
Thank you, Mr. Burton. In that still vein, let's stay at Blake Park. What would you do to expedite improvements and additions and projects in the works for Royal Park? Why has it taken so long? That's for Mr. Burton.
Yes, Royal Park. They put up a pavilion that needed to have a lot more work to it than it was designed. That park has come back. The lake has come back. At one point, you can go out on that boardwalk, and you can, you could barely see the water line. The water line is coming back. People use it, utilize it. So we need to be able to put more attention to it. I do believe that because of the absence of one man, Rick Mullins, that wasn't me. Oh. Because of the absence of Rick Mullins, a lot of the things in our city's public works have been put to the side. Having Rick Mullins back and knowing the kind of work that he does, I'm confident that he can make that park work. I have to say that the Melissa Park was in my zone, and it was neglected for many years. I would sit on the board, and we would do our budget, and at the end of the year, when we look at the budget, what got spent, we seem to have used Melissa Park to subsidize the other parks. So I got to Ricky, and Ricky was able to, not only did we develop a plan, the building didn't have a bathroom. We didn't have an outdoor bathroom. Our kids would have to go in the woods if they went at all. So there was an opportunity to buy property right next to the park, and we actually had to have 3 buildings demolished so that they were not an eyesore or a danger. And as a result, those buildings went to the county. Because they were not for taxes, and the county turned around and gave it to us. And then I bought one piece of property right next to it and used it it was supposed to be for possibly a walk trail.
Thank you, Mr. Burton. Ms. Frasca, what would you do to expedite improvements or additions or projects in the works for Royal Park? Why is it taking so long?
Thank you, Jim. I believe that in one of our meetings, when I was up on the dais, we were directing our focus after the completion of Blake Park's Phase 1 to Melissa Park. I know that the 5K that I organize every Christmas Eve, we have raised funds. Previously, Ann Robbins was the head of that, and she was raising funds for Blake Park. Around the time that I came in and took over, the funds were heading towards Melissa Park, as Melissa Park's playground is going to be, the parts are going to be delivered next week, fingers crossed. The pallets should be delivered next week. We are moving towards another area, and I believe I believe Commissioner Basso had made a promise, at least up on the dais, and said that until Melissa Park is complete, we will not hit the shovel on the next project. So that does not mean that it has been forgotten. That means that we have the priorities of finishing what we're starting to move that through. I think that Royal Park would be a wonderful start on our next project. I know that I'm going to be raising money and it needs to go to one of our parks, so, see that fit. In addition to that, we had our playground equipment removed from Mitchell Brothers Park, and that one's lacking playground equipment. So if there's some type of happy medium there to address both parks, I think that would be great. But ideally is to focus on one park at a time so that way we can complete the idea at one time. Thank you.
Thanks. That's customary when you have a moderation like this where there's only two individuals, candidates, to go back and forth. So the person who last speaks on the question is typically the first person that speaks on the next question. So you can anticipate that from me going forward. We're going to stay in the parks, and we've already talked a little bit about Melissa Park, even though it wasn't a question, and we've addressed Royal Park. What about Lake Macy? Have you guys been there lately? Ms. Frasca.
Yes, hello. Thank you. Lake Macy had a playground at one time. It was removed because parts of it was unsafe at the time for children to play on. We haven't seen that playground come back to us, partly because the way that park is designed is it was flooding. So if you go out there and when the lakes are rising, you'll see that it's wet there. The pavilion, it comes all the way up to the pavilion, that's wet. That doesn't mean that nothing can happen, because anything's possible, when we have the proper knowledge and engineering to go forth. I think that Lake Macy has been a fishing point for quite some time. I know that my kids enjoyed going out there on the dock in the mornings to, watch the fish hop in and out. They pop up. I told them not to give them bread. I can't promise that they didn't. But anyways, the Lake Macy Park is an asset to our community and should be treated as such. We need to continue to maintain our parks and our playgrounds, and where we see that there is lack of luster, we need to repair that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to say that donation by the Moore family for the pavilion was very kind, and it brings an extra added value to our park. Thank you.
Indeed, that pavilion is quite nice out there. We also enjoy it. Mr. Burton, what are your plans for Lake Macy, sir, and have you been there lately?
I've gone by it. I've come in it just to drive around and look into it, but no, I haven't developed a plan. What I would like to do, being on the commission, I'd like to take all of the parks and then score them as to what needs to have the most work, what needs to be addressed, and what the resources are available for each park or each park in its own individual. Having been on the receiving end of Melissa Park not getting the resources, I can tell you for sure that I would not want to see any park that would be in need not get the things that it needs to be to keep it viable. As more people moving into our cities, the point that I was saying is that we have these resources, and we need to find ways to use those resources to attract people and let them know that they're there. A lot of people don't know where half of our parks are because they either come through going to the post office, the people who don't live here. So I think if we could put on some event that would highlight all the parks in one time, that be different events going on at the same day, and that people could then be drawn to, oh, here's Lake Macy, here's Royal Park, and here's Melissa Park. And so they can do this all in one day. I mean, they have round robins that go around and let people see things that they would not ordinarily see. So this would be an opportunity to use our resources as well as our either Parks and Recs organization, where it is, to be able to bring people into our community and let them see what we enjoy. And not only see what we enjoy, but see what we have somewhat neglected, because we've gotten away from the belief that we need to put energy in it, and that's something that I think is causing the city.
Thank you, Mr. Burton. We're going to move away from the parks here for a few minutes, and for the audience, we have an intermission at 8. And I've got 3 particular questions here that are regarding code compliance. And one question, and I'm going to do the best here to incorporate all 3 of them here. One question relates, would you be in favor of taking necessary action in code violation cases where there have been no complaints? And I'll give these to you in just a few minutes so you can refer to them, because some of them are lengthy. What would you do to improve Lake Helen's main entrances? Would you let the tactic of grandfather continue, or use code enforcement, which relates then back to code compliance? This one asks, do you intend to enforce current zoning laws on Lake Helen, referring to a trucking company at West Pennsylvania and Goodwin? So I know, based on my prior experience, these are deep answers. They're complicated answers to each question here. I'd like to give the candidates just a minute or 2 each time to review this. And Ms. Frasca and Mr. Burton, on this one, please feel free to read the whole thing, of course. But this is part of the question here. This is the question I'm asking you that I've circled. But they are lengthy, and I think out of respect for both of y'all and our audience, you should be able to read all 3. But the core question is code compliance, current zoning laws, and enforcement. And when you start to answer, that's when Mr. Bill here is going to start his time. So remember, you have 2 minutes to answer 3 complicated questions, all relating to zoning and code enforcement. And what are you going to do to help these questioners? Let's go to these 2 here, because we have other questions to ask, okay? You may not have this amount of time as the mayor to answer a question like this. So, Ms. Frasca, with that, I'm going to ask you and ask Mr. Bill here to go ahead and start your time.
Thank you. Okay. The questions were based on code compliance, enforcement, zoning laws. There was a discussion of a trucking company on Pennsylvania and the entryway to our city, and the other one was in reference to a mobile home on West Ohio that no one has complained about. So let's start with the entryway. Well, it is our job as a city to maintain our entryway. It is our job to maintain the easements coming in. So recently, since we have gotten Ricky Mullins back, which is wonderful, we have seen those maintenance issues start to pick up and start to clear up. So that's one good thing. as far as code compliance in our entryway, I can't really put my finger on one, and please, I apologize if I'm missing the question on that, on code compliance on the entryway down Main Street all the way to Lakeview. I apologize if I'm wrong. I don't have that answer because I don't know what we're talking about as far as what property. Enforcement and zoning laws. Well, we have the comp plan, the 2035 comp plan that references to our
Ms.
zoning.
Frasca, we're going to give you another minute.
Okay. Sorry. That reference to our zoning laws as far as our zoning, and so I would say that is where we need to reference that. If there are any problems in our zoning, then that's something that needs to be brought up for discussion, because the thing about government is we can change things if needed. As far as enforcement, we are on complaint-based. So if you have an issue with a neighbor or a property, you just call in, leave your name. That is required by the state of Florida at this time. No more anonymous complaints. Leave your name and your information, and that will be directed from our police department, and they will go try to handle that issue for you. So, sorry if I did not answer this question correctly. I was a little confused.
Well, it didn't refer to any particular thing, so I don't think you're all that confused, frankly. Mr. Burton, again, all three questions relate to code enforcement and zoning. One that was referenced was this question about would you be in favor of taking necessary action in code violation cases where there have been no complaints? Ready?
Okay.
Current zoning laws, enforcing that, and the entrances question.
Okay.
Yep, you can't keep them. You had enough.
Okay. When you start talking about code enforcement, then you have to go to police.
You also have 3 minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you. You have to start with police, because code enforcement officers, I don't know if many of you remember Patrick Carino, who was our code enforcement officer. Patrick Carino had to go to school to basically learn almost how to become a paralegal. Not just because he's not only a police officer, but a paralegal, because he has to appear before magistrates, and he has to be able to have his ducks in order, or else the case is going to get thrown out. So when you start talking about code enforcement, when you start talking about writing a law, what goes along with the law is a law enforcement. If you don't have the ability to enforce the law, then putting a law on the books is just basically just making yourself go crazy. So code enforcement has to be hand in hand with law enforcement. We have to be able to train an officer that is qualified to be code enforcement officer. Before Mike Walker left, there was a move away from what we call complaint-only driven. And I remember that because one of the officers who was assigned to it, I can't remember his name, young former Marine, I remember that. My son was a Marine, Caleb. And what he was able to do was go around and to alert the people that we're going to start changing the way that we are addressing things. So we're going to give you a heads up. We want to be able to use this not as a stick, but just as a carrot, that letting you know that we're going to do something different. Because if you've been getting away with something for a long time, and then the next thing you know, somebody steps up and now they're going to push the button, and now you're supposed to be in compliance. We need to be able to bring them up to speed. Code compliance does create people's perception of the city as not being able to take care of itself. So code enforcement, code compliance is necessary. Now, in terms of it being able to have a code violation that does not have a complainant, I think is for the better good of the city, because we are neighbors to one another, and not everybody wants to be the guy. They don't want to be that guy. But if we have the officers and we have the means to be able to address things, and even if it means that in some instances of the city, sometimes we have what they call cleanup day. So everybody that will be able to volunteer and have locations that are identified that they can go in and then they can clean them up and somehow diminish some of the problems that we have. But there again, that's because we're a community and we do those things. We've done those things in the past, I know, because I've been in the commission when we've done them.
Great. I think the additional minute was helpful for you both. I mean, that was complicated in some manners, and the questions. But I think you guys, both of you, have done a very good job in answering these questions so far to this time. And with that, we're going to break. And let me tell you, let's see how long. Sometimes either. You know what? Okay. Where do we want to go here to start this next hour? Kelly, you and I talked before we started. Do you want to address some of these singular questions right now? There's only two of them. Well, maybe three. I'm going to try and combine two of them into one. Well, actually, I have four, but I think I can combine. Oh, I can count. I can count. Well, I tell you, it's a great crowd here.
How about you combine whatever seems to be together?
I've got four, but I'm going to combine into two, I think.
Oh, there you go.
This first question is concerning your first term as a commissioner. And one refers to you were on public record pursuing conflict amongst city staff and fellow commissioners.
Say that again?
I'll let you have them. I'll read them to the audience first, and I'll read them, then you can have them. I want them back, though, but you can have them.
Okay.
Question number one is, you served one term as commissioner of your zone and lost your re-election. How have you adjusted your goals and leadership since to increase your effectiveness as a representative? The second question relates to this first. During your first term as commissioner, you're on public record pursuing conflict amongst city staff and fellow commissioners. And how will your approach be different this term, and how? They kind of relate. Both of them are asking, well, what have you done since?
Yeah.
To address some of that.
What have I done since?
Well, I will let you answer that, Kelly. I mean, that's not my job. But,
okay.
All right.
Well, I appreciate that. Okay. Thank you, Jim. I was zone commissioner from 2019 to 2021, for those of you who might not know. I was new. It was the first time I had taken office. There's a lot that you learn from when you first go in. And we make mistakes. And we learn from those mistakes. We admit our mistakes. And we move forward trying not to ever repeat those again. As far as mistakes, I could say that there was one, a very big one. I seem to be and I say this in this direction, is I was misunderstanding, or I was guided, and some of the actions that were taken when Ricky Mullins was retiring. I found out not too long after he had left that I was wrong. And I wanted to correct that. So I asked Ricky if I may speak with him. And I spoke with him, and I explained myself, and I apologized for allowing myself to be misled. I also came in front of the commission during a commission meeting and wanted to make that a public apology because I was wrong. I know that when it comes to
about 10 seconds, Kelly.
Okay. I like to do a lot of research before I can have answers, and sometimes asking for that research causes questions.
Thank you. These next two questions I'm going to combine into one, and one of them is a little hard to read, so I'm just going to go ahead and paraphrase it here. These are, well, actually, stand by. I just noticed something here. Okay. Kelly, how would you handle a disagreement between a city employee and a citizen? As mayor, how would you handle a disagreement between a citizen and a city employee?
Well, a citizen and a city employee, if a situation came up and it was brought to my attention, I would handle it with the most possible diplomacy that I can offer. I believe that issue would directly go to the city administrator prior to reaching me, because that is our chain of command. However, if it is a situation that happens or occurs during a commission meeting, then that's a different story also, because then we have to remain, we need to remain civil in our commission meetings. We need to have decorum. This is not a zoo. So we need to be able to conduct ourselves properly and efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And this last question is actually directed to you both in the similar vein. And Vernon, we'll start with you, sir. Mr. Burton, if you were mayor, if you find out a commissioner is in cahoots against citizens, how will you handle it?
Define cahoots.
Mr. Burton, I'm going to allow you to do that. I'm not answering the question.
Okay. How would it depends on what is being cahooted. On a serious note, I have been brought into a number of situations where citizens have had problems with either something at City Hall, even as a commissioner. One of the things that I always stress is that as a citizen, you have the right to get a redress of all of your issues. As a city commissioner, I cannot promise you that I will get it resolved, but I will look into it. And the reason for that is that because any issue that you have, if you tell me and I'm in agreement with you, then I would suggest that you also speak to at least 2 other commissioners, because it takes 3 of us to be able to make a ruling or to make an issue. And anybody that tells you that they're going to revamp the whole city and do everything out of thin air, they're promising you basically pie in the sky. But you got to be able to have the ability to both moderate, mediate, and to be able to communicate. And once you can do those things, you can usually find solutions. One of the things I often told my kids is that God made more solutions than He made problems. The only thing we got to do is just find them. So there's a solution to every problem. We just need to take the time to look into them.
Thank you, Mr. Burton. Ms. Frasca. As mayor, if you find out a commissioner is in cahoots against citizen, how will you handle it?
Was that a plural for citizens?
It is not a plural. It
Okay.
is written citizen, against
Okay.
citizen, but I would assume in the syntax it would be citizens.
Okay, thank you. Well, first, where is this information coming from? Is this information provable? That's a very important thing. I mean, we don't just run on rumors. We need to run on facts. I would say that having a little bit of history on it, it should be addressed at a meeting, so that way the entire body of our commissioners can address it and speak on it. We've had a lot in the past where we are active, we react on the rumor mill, and rather than settling down and hitting the facts and directly having that conversation, and we can only do that in a meeting or workshop, but it has to be a public meeting or workshop in order for the commission to discuss openly because of the Sunshine Law. I think that's pretty much the answer that I'm going to go with.
Very good. Thank you. I can't lie. I do like the word and the use of cahoots. It just sounds good. Cahoots. Could be. These two questions are both related. Give me a chance to read them both to you, but I think and I'll do my best to relate them, but I've read them and they're easily related. One of the difficulties facing, this is directed to both of you, and Ms. Frasca, we will start with you, and I'll hand these questions to you both, and you can review them. One of the difficulties facing the city the past 6 years has been an increased amount of turnover in our city administration, compounded by re-elections to the commission every year. This constant state of change brings with it an increased amount of instability. How would you bring a sense of stability to our commission if elected? That's question number one of the same topic for you both. Second question of the same topic. Lake Helen has been challenged with staff turnover and difficulty attracting replacement staff. We struggle to compete with larger communities in the private sector pay scales. How will you help position Lake Helen as an employer of choice? So these both relate to staff turnover, consistently occurring. So with that, Kelly, do we give you about 10, 15 seconds to review those questions before you answer? Let's go ahead and give you 10 seconds here while you read those. Mr. Burton, I would avail yourself at the same time, sir. Mr. Bill, if you'd start that 2 minutes now, please. Ms. Frasca.
I agree that we have had difficulty over the past 6 years. In the past 10 years that I have been a resident, we have had we're going on our fourth city administrator. It is a topic that is being discussed and was discussed today earlier at a special meeting. In the past, we have the direction we went with was utilizing I believe it's called range riders, which is it's former city administrators who have been in the government who retire and that can now lend a hand in finding replacements for city managers and city administrators. I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that they do a bad job. I asked the question of, have we gone with a professional firm in the past? Just wondering, since the past 6 years 10 years for city administrators. The answer was no, we haven't tried that route. So that was my suggestion in that. And today, the commission, 3-1, chose to go with the professional firm, setting out an RFP, which is an open bidding process for receiving applicants. The professional firm, what they do is they go out and they do all the background check. They do the deep digging, so that way when they come to us, we know what we're looking at. And wrapping that up, I believe if we have the right person as a leader, and leaders and the city administrator, we can work well together and we won't have that problem. Thank you.
Mr. Burton, you've got the questions here ahead of you. You've had a chance to hear them a couple of times. So do you need to refer to these anymore? Thank you, sir. Mr. Bill?
The city of Lake Helen has had 5 city administrators in the city's history. started with the Tallahassee requiring the cities to become more professional in their governance. And we hired a guy by the name of Don Findell to be the professional manager. Because it's a ballot amendment that would have to change the charter to put him in as a city manager, it failed the ballot. So what we did do is that we optioned to go for a city administrator, and the city administrator can and must work or serve at the pleasure of the commission. The only thing that we did not do was give him the ability to hire and to fire. Now, over the period of time of the 5 of the commissioners, city administrators that we have, I hired 3 of them, and Findell was there, and he left, but he left on his own regards, because they were trying to get rid of him. With regards to turnover generally starts with the place to look. The first time we had a high turnover, it was the person that replaced Findell, which was KC, and we lost a city administrator. I mean, he was a city administrator. We lost a city attorney, Lonnie Groot. We lost financial people who was in charge of finance. It was just a high turnover because he was not administering. As a matter of fact, when they went to, I was the one that wanted to have him fired. To not fire him, had to use that word, to cancel his contract. And as a result, he left the city. And when he left, it was something that he just kind of slunk away. But my point is that I would not stand for a city administrator that's not going to do his job.
Keeping in that same vein, Mr. Burton, do you support the city administration to solely have the power to hire or fire city employees and contractors without the commission approval? Now, I need to clarify one piece of this, being a former commissioner. The city administrator has the authority to contract with outside contractors without the commission approval. The question is more germane: do you support the city administration to solely have the power to hire or fire city employees?
The administrator under the charter does not have that authority. Now, the one thing that I asked Don Findell, because he was the one that explained the difference between a manager and a city administrator, and the explanation that he gave me, I asked him the question, which would you rather be? He said, I'd rather be the manager. He said, but he also underscored that the city administrator can actually be given more authority than the manager, because the commission could say, well, we're giving you the ability to hire and fire. With Don Findell, we gave him the ability to hire. When we had the city, the Creative Arts Cafe, we had busboys and waiters that were in that employ. Well, imagine trying to get a city commission meeting to hire or fire a busboy. So the city commission gave him the authority to fire and hire busboys. So where we had the ability to give him the authority, he serves at the pleasure of the commission, so we could take that authority away. Would I want to be able to have a city administrator that has the right to hire and fire? That's one of those things that we can look at the city administrator and have a good city administrator one time, and the next time we could have another city administrator that is completely horrible. So that's one question that I guess would be left up to you, the voters, because the voters would be the one that would change that. The voters would be the one that would give us the ability to have a city manager if that's what you wanted. The reason we don't have a manager is because the city voted not to have a city manager. So I'd be serving at the pleasure of the constituents, which is you. And if we hire a city manager, he will serve at the pleasure of me and the commission. So I think that's an issue that we could make that decision when it comes.
Kelly, do you want the question asked again? Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Well, Vernon pretty much summed it up on where we're at now. But I will say the question is, do I support it? This has been a question that's bounced back and forth on the commission for quite some time in the past, especially with introduction of some of the charter changes. With the votes, according to our citizens, when we have those votes, it doesn't seem to be what the city wants. For me personally, I'm okay with the city administrator being able to allow the the department heads to choose the staff members that fit in their team, and to bring those up to our city administrator for presentation, which is basically where we do it now. But I also believe that when it comes to our department heads, I believe that choice should come directly from the commission. So.
Pardon me, I was doing on a question, Ms. Frasca. I didn't mean to interject.
That's okay. I'm done.
Very well. Again, my apologies, ma'am. That was totally unrelated to your comment. With that, Ms. Frasca will continue, and then Mr. Burton, you can follow up on this answer. Ms. Frasca, do you believe the city officials' behavior on social media is important? Why and why not?
Thank you, Jim. I believe that our city officials' behavior on social media is just the same as being in a meeting, at an event. When we step up here, we are representing each and every one of you. And I'm pretty sure you don't want to be represented in a very negative way. And if we're talking, I'm assuming we're talking about bad behavior, because we all want to have, be represented in a positive manner and informative manner. But when it comes to negativity or spreading out any hostile feelings, I believe that's best left personal, not on social media. Because no matter where we go, as one of your commissioners, even as the mayor, we represent our city, which is each and every one of you. And I'm sure you don't want somebody out there making you look bad. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Burton, how about you? Do you believe that city officials' behavior on social media is important? Why or why not?
As a city elected official, every year you have to take what we call an ethics course. And the ethics course is taught every year, and you have to sit in for a certain amount of hours. One of the things that's always the first thing that comes up is be careful of doing anything that has the appearance of impropriety. If social media is going to be a platform that you can rile and rage against people, or if you're not able to have people criticize you, so you have to criticize. I don't go on social media, so I can say that very carefully and very confidently. I don't use social media. I very rarely go on. I have a Facebook page, but I don't use it. So now, as far as the question goes, I think the citizens require and expect us to operate with a certain decorum. And that decorum also goes along with having a certain respect for themselves and for the other and for their fellow citizens. And once that breaks down, then people start becoming belligerent, and people start hiding behind pseudonyms and calling people out and all that kind of nonsense. I think it doesn't do the city it doesn't do the city justice. So for my own self, I don't involve myself with social media. If there are things that are said about me, sometimes because somebody has brought it to my attention. It's not because I seek it out. It's definitely not something that I would engage in anybody if they said something about me derogatory that I didn't think that was fair. I can just as easy turn it off. So.
Thank you, Mr. Burton. Keeping in that vein, Sir, a recurring problem has been a lack of decorum at the recent city commission meetings. What experience do you have in managing a public meeting? And what is your plan to keep meetings professional as mayor? Mr. Burton? Yes, sir.
The mayor holds the gavel. He is the one that is supposed to be able to be in control of the meeting. And you set that standard as you begin. I've sat next to all of the mayors since, from Buddy Snowden to Joan Duffy to Daisy Ressler. And sitting beside them for these years, I've learned a few things that can keep the meeting going without letting it getting out of hand. To be able to talk to people and be able to know when to ratchet it down. Now, I mentioned in the very beginning that I was not a prison guard, I was a corrections officer. So if you can tell by the tone of my voice that I can get command by just giving my voice and making it softer or bringing it down. So people respond to how you treat them. If you respect them, you show them respect, they will show you respect. You disrespect them, and then it's going to be a melee. I don't think we need to bring a city commissioner or a city, we don't need to bring that to this commission. It doesn't do us any, it does the city a disservice. I can remember one of the things that, I can't remember exactly what the issue was, but the news media showed up because they thought there was going to be a knockdown, drag out of what was going to happen in the city commission. And as it turned out, the only thing that was to write about, there was a bat flying around in City Hall. And that was the only issue that was dealt with. And so people were ginned up to wait to hear what was going to happen, but everything was diffused. And I think that's the way we should be able to handle ourselves as individuals. No one here we're all here of voting age.
Ms. Frasca, you too have been a part of some contentious city commission meetings, and a recurring problem has been a lack of decorum at these meetings. And what experience do you have in managing a public meeting, and what would be your plan as mayor to keep these meetings professional?
Well, I believe that Vernon said a lot of great things that I do agree with. For myself, I definitely am a firm believer on how you treat the others is how you are treated. That being said, when you're an elected official and you're up there on the dais, does not give you an excuse to misbehave. And I say the word misbehave because at times it is very childish behavior. As a mayor, it is our job to govern that meeting and keep it civil, and to keep that decorum up. In the past, my first term, sometimes I felt like I had to go speak out of turn in order to get a chance to speak. And I've seen many meetings and held in many different ways. I have learned, that our commission is only as strong as they are together. If they're not working together, then it's going to be a constant issue of bickering, and that's no place to waste your time, to waste our staff's time, or to waste any of our, sitting commissioners' time. So I would like to say going forward, it's not necessary to happen. We can all speak at a decent level. We can all, allow each other to speak and handle this professionally and like an adult. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you both. I think, our goal is to get you guys out of here at 9 p.m. And we want to respect your time, and so thankful for all of you coming out here this evening. But I really do want to thank you both candidates, Mr. Burton, Ms. Frasca. I think thank you for coming out and answering all these questions. as Robin indicated early on in the session tonight, there's a lot more questions out here that we have time in which to answer. And it's my job to try to but to ask the questions in a manner that which is a hard job for me, what are important questions. Every one of these questions are important. Every one of them that were read and unread have significance here to the city. I hope you gained enough information from the questions and the answers. And if your question was not asked, I mean no disrespect. I try when I do this to try to keep the questions in a vein in a certain manner. So I take that responsibility of taking these questions and answering, depending on what I have here. So with that, Kelly went first in the opening. And Mr. Burton, you have 3 minutes, sir. And you too, Ms. Frasca, when it comes your turn. Sir? Vernon does go first. What did I say? Thank you. I thought I said that. Bill, you need to pay attention. Like I said, you need to pay. It's okay. We got your back, brother. Mr. Burton, you have 3 minutes, sir, in your closing statement.
I don't know. I've done this 4 times now. I've run for mayor 4 times. The last time, probably, it was the easiest and the hardest at the same time. When I lost in November, my daughter, who was living with me, was undergoing chemo, and not chemo, she had a double mastectomy. So the entire year of 2022, if I would have been on this board, I don't think I could have given her the opportunity to be able to share with her because she passed in June. So this race I'm dedicating it to her because she was one of my biggest supporters. She was not a person that gave up. She fought it to the very end, and I think that it was only for me to be able to be here now was because I've been in this race. I think I'm a long distance runner, and for the years when I first moved out here, I had these long dreadlocks, and then you see this guy running through town with these dreadlocks. And one of the things that I took away from running is that, it's not the point of how fast you go, it's whether or not you can complete the course. I think the Bible speaks about it this way, is that the race is not given to the swift or to the strong, but to he who endures to the end. And I've been involved in this city, and I intend to be involved in this city. The only time that in the past 14 years that I did not spend every waking moment going to a commission meeting was that year that I lost, and I think that was God's providence that I didn't have to do that. But it gave me a time to rest. It gave me a time to reassess myself. People were asking me, was I going to run? I didn't know why they were asking me. I was retired. But God always has a plan. I don't second guess him, and I don't try to undercut whatever he has in plan. So for the city of Lake Helen, I'm the leadership that you deserve. I'm the person that can do the job. I'm the person that can bring, I think, stability, camaraderie, and respect to the city commission. And I can do that because I believe in team building. I don't believe I'm a one-man show. I mean, Michael Jordan without Scottie Pippen or Dennis Rodman would not be the player that he is. So I'm a believer of being a team player, and I think we can make this team work. It takes a team to make the dream work, and I'm that team.
Thank you, Mr. Burton. Thank you, Mr. Burton. Mrs. Frasca, you have 3 minutes, ma'am, for your closing statement.
Thank you, Jim. I'd like to take this time to thank the League of Better Living for hosting this event tonight, including all the volunteers that have helped out. And I'm especially thankful to each and every citizen that has joined us tonight, either here in person or on the web. Our citizens and our community are of the utmost importance to me. and it is my duty to make your concerns a top priority. As I've proven in the past 20 months, regardless of the results of any election, I will continue to stand up for our community, listen, examine, and assist in finding solutions that meet all of our community needs. And as a longtime advocate for community in general, and for 10 years here in our city, I believe in protecting and preserving what we value here in our gem, our historic charm, in harmony with nature. That's how I see it. So you can count on me to continue to fight to ensure that smart growth that protects our green spaces, farmland, natural beauty, environmental areas, and especially clean water. I am passionate about making our city a better place to live, work, and play, as I'm committed to creating, with the Commission, a vibrant and thriving community that is safe, prosperous, and welcoming to all. So thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to the opportunity to serve our city once again and to make sure Lake Helen remains the place we all love to call home. So just a note, remember that early voting is next week, August 14th through 18th at the Supervisor of Elections office here in DeLand. And our primary, which is our only election, is on August 22nd from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. here at Hopkins Hall. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Frasca. I, too, echo your comment about the league here, and thank you so much for putting all this together for us and putting the chairs out and the refreshments out there. And with that, is Robin around?